Okay. Well, thank you all for joining us today. I'm Renee Hayter. I'm the Associate Director of Sustainable Jersey, and we manage a Sustainable Jersey Municipal Program and a Sustainable Jersey for Schools program. Has everybody here heard of Sustainable Jersey? Probably many of your schools are participating in the program. And with me, joining me is my partner on the Climate Challenge Project. Andrea, you want to?
Sure. Hi, I'm Dr. Andrea Drews. I'm a professor at Rider University in the Department of Graduate Education, Leadership, and Counseling. I'm a former middle school science teacher and have kind of done a lot of work around climate change education and climate change teacher professional development. So that's why I've been working very closely with RENEE and Sustainable Jersey and Sustainable Jersey for Schools to help kind of bring this project at first just to South Jersey last year, but now we're really excited to expand it statewide this year.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll start with going over. We have a prepared presentation, and we'll start with that. And at the end of the meeting, I hope to have a lot of time for us to answer questions and share ideas and things like that. So I guess I'm getting feedback. If you all could put your microphones on mute unless you're going to speak, because I hear feedback. Let me make sure. I don't think. Okay. Good afternoon, Melissa. Andrea, do you hear the feedback?
You have a notification.
No. Can everybody just mute themselves unless they're speaking? It's always an adventure when you go on these things, what's going to happen, but I think it's gone now. So we're going to get started. Andrew, you want to pull the PowerPoint up? And some more people are trickling in. So today is the teacher information session. We ran another one of these last week in the evening, and both recordings will be posted on the Sustainable Jersey website. And I'll email everyone that participated today a copy of the slides so that you have them, because it includes some links to information. Do you want to, the climate challenge, as Andrea said before, was launched as a pilot project last year. It's funded by Atlantic City Electric and Exelon Foundation, and it's a partnership between the Drumthwacket Foundation, which is the residence of the governor of New Jersey, and Sustainable Jersey for Schools. So kind of Drumthwacket and Sustainable Jersey are administering the program, and Atlantic City Electric and Exelon are providing the funding to do it. Today, we're going to kind of just give an overview of what the climate challenge is and share some lessons that we learned from the pilot, because we did learn a lot that I think will be useful to everyone. And then we'll highlight some of the resources available to teachers and students to support work on it. And then we'll go over the submission evaluation rubric. So just to kind of reinforce even more what we're looking for in the climate challenge. And then hopefully we'll have lots of time for questions and ideas and requests. If you think one of the things we're going to talk about is that not the information sessions, but the educational sessions that we're going to do for teachers and students. So if there's a particular topic that you're interested in that you think other teachers or students are, please let us know so we can explore doing a session on that topic. Okay. Next slide. Again, if everybody could mute themselves, that would be helpful. So the challenge is for any public, it's school-based, and it's for students in grades 6 through 12, public school students in grades 6 through 12. It's intended, the challenge itself is a contest, and the contest is for students to complete a community or school project addressing the human causes of climate change or the impacts of climate change on the environment. And we want the students to do the projects in a team from 2 to 12. It could be a little bit more if that works better for you, but because we want them to get not only kind of the climate change learning, but also the experience of a collaborative project with other students. And that after they complete the project, the submission, it culminates in a digital story video, which we'll talk more about what a digital story is about their project. So they actually have to do a project and then tell us a story about what they did. Next. And the timeline is that in late January, we're doing the information sessions now. In late January, early February, we'll start with educational sessions for teachers and students. And then you'll have, and the sessions for the students are going to be focused on reinforcing what the impacts of climate change are, what students can do about it, and what resources are out to help them support their project, where, who they could go for help or what resource documents would be helpful. The submissions are due April 1st, and then we'll announce the finalists sometime in May, depending on how many submissions we get. It may be early May or mid-May, and then we'll have an award ceremony in June, hopefully, fingers crossed, at the Drumthwacket Foundation estate in Princeton. We were supposed to do that this year, and unfortunately, at the last minute, we were told that we should go virtual. So that's what we did, but we're really hoping that things will be better. And given the time of year in June, we'll be able to have a live event with the First Lady and possibly the governor there, and the finalists, where we'll announce the first place and second place and third place winners. Next. On the Sustainable Jersey website, which that's a bit.ly to it, I also put it as the first chat. So if you scroll all the way back to the beginning of the chat, the link will be there. We do have a climate challenge teacher's guide, which will be highlighting some of the stuff that's in the guide. We also have like a shortened version of the teacher guide that is for students in particular, and there's a Word version and a PDF version, so you can make whatever changes you want to make to it for your students if you choose to use it. There are kind of official climate challenge rules, and there is a student consent and release form which needs to be provided in each submission, a copy of a signed release form, and that's in because they're videos and we'll be kind of showing them, or we may want to use them to promote the climate challenge in the future. The sponsors want us to get these release forms. And then there's also the climate challenge brochure, which is on our website. And we encourage you to share information about the climate challenge on your, any professional groups you belong to, or Facebook pages with lots of teachers, because the whole idea is to empower youth to take action on climate change. And so the more people that participate, the more impactful it will be for New Jersey and for students. Next. So the things that we're going to focus on, and Andrea's going to dive a little bit deeper in these, is first focusing on the connection to climate change and the project. We did have lots of great projects last time, but one of the things that could really be strengthened is making the connection of the project to the causes or impacts of climate change. Like, for example, we had some submissions that dealt with litter, picking up litter, which is important, but there wasn't a strong connection made between litter abatement and climate change. And there could be one, but what was offered didn't make that per se. And of course, prioritizing the selection of projects based on kind of how closely related it is to addressing the cause or impact of climate change is better. The other thing is that we need them to complete a specific project or tangible outcome. So the idea is really kind of getting students involved in civic activity, whether it's in their school or in their community, and doing something in that realm. So doing like a science project or a prototype of something is not necessarily what we're looking for in this contest. We really want students to have experience with kind of mustering up and planning for implementing a project in their school or community. And then we want them to tell a story about why, you know, what they did so that they can inspire others through the story. And then for teachers, just encouraging teachers to connect units of study or club activities with the projects that the students are doing. So perhaps, you know, not only participating in the contest, but assigning it as like a personalized learning experience for credit in your class is a good thing too. And it kind of supports the experience of integrating climate change education into the curriculum. Next. So I'm going to turn it over to Andrea, who's going to go deeper in all those things that I just highlighted. And please feel free to ask questions or make comments in the chat as we go along.
There's the bit.ly in the chat again, just in case you don't want to scroll back up. And you would think I would be better at Zooming after 2 years of teaching online, but not quite. There we go. Can everybody see the PowerPoint again? Okay, great. So one of the main ideas with regard to making those connections to climate change, as Renee alluded to, you know, that we received a lot of great projects that kind of had a bit more tangential connections to climate change. So when we're thinking about climate change, and I assume with all of us here, we all have like a general understanding of climate change. So there are human activities that we are doing as society, as a global society, that are the causes of climate change. Those activities are leading to an increased concentration of greenhouse gases in our atmosphere, which then causes the phenomena of climate change, which then in turn has the resulting negative impacts on our society, our world, our local communities, etc. When we're talking about climate change, we really want to focus in on where students can take action in kind of 2 realms. The first realm being the causes. So focusing on how we can what's called mitigate, or the mitigation strategies for climate change. So that's actually trying to decrease the amount of greenhouse gases that are going into our atmosphere. You can also focus student action projects on the other side, which is the end, kind of dealing with learning to live with some of those negative impacts, which we call adaptation. So student projects, absolutely, and just like climate scientists and civic activists around the world are doing kind of action either towards mitigation or adaptation. And so really kind of focusing in on making that connection to climate change, how the approach that you're taking, either the mitigation action or the adaptation action that your students are doing, and really strengthening that connection to climate change. And if anybody has questions while we're doing this, I am on my 1 monitor setup, so I can no longer see the chat. So if anybody has questions, just unmute and interrupt me, because I can't even see hands raised at this
So
point.
Carolyn McGrath has a question. She raised her hand. Carolyn, you want?
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt about this. This is, Andrea, something that perhaps you are knowledgeable about, but I've been trying to find this information. Short of doing a, what is it called? Carbon inventory in our particular school district. Is there any information like statewide about, in terms of the education sector, like what are the largest things that schools are doing to contribute to climate change? That's
so ideas for specific projects?
No, I guess what I'm wondering is like, are, busing and cart, is transportation to and from schools the biggest contributor for schools in New Jersey to climate change, or is heating and cooling,
right.
but for the education sector in New Jersey? And
That's actually a really good question. I, off the top of my head, don't know of any resources that break it down by like sector in such as you're kind of describing it. Like, well, what do schools contribute? Yes, we have transportation causes or factors related to climate change. Yes, we have heating and energy. If I had to guess, it would probably be heating and energy followed closely by transportation. But that's a good question, and I will do some investigating and can get back to you.
Another big contributor for schools is probably food waste.
Yeah.
Because of the amount of food that's wasted in the cafeterias, and that going to the landfill and then, you know, producing methane gases. But overall in New Jersey, the transportation sector is the biggest contributor. But again, we don't have it broken out by segment. We could ask the DEP folks if they have it.
They might. But thanks. That is a good question to think about, what the role of schools.
Yeah, I think the reason I'm interested in this is, you know, thinking like that would be an important piece of the like kind of outreach campaign to folks, again, short of doing a specific, you know, carbon inventory for our school, which my understanding is quite like a process to get like that specific data. So I was just kind of wondering, you know, if that's available just kind of as a starting point for selecting an area of focus.
Yeah,
no, I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say, we can look, but I can guarantee you it's gonna come up. Heating and cooling, you know, heating and cooling the building, transportation, and food waste will be the biggest causes. And
Probably from
transportation
schools,
includes like anti-idling is a big thing in schools, not only because of the emissions, you know, and greenhouse gases, but air quality around schools.
But yeah, so that kind of thinking about what are we doing? What are some of those causes? You know, the question kind of led Renee and I to give a little preview of some of this. So thinking about what are some of the human activities that we are doing to cause an increased concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. And like we alluded to before, fossil fuel use for energy production or for heat is absolutely going to be a big one. And so thinking about, well, what could my students do to decrease how much fossil fuel use we use for energy or heat in our school, in our community, in our individual homes? Well, thinking about projects that focus on mitigation strategies to either increase energy efficiency or energy conservation, or to increase renewable energy sources themselves. So the amount of where the energy is coming from. Another popular cause that we could focus on and really have a project that highlights how much fossil fuel use is, how much fossil fuels are used for transportation. That's where Renee was just, you know, alluding to those anti-idling campaigns, thinking about encouraging students campaigns to drive less, carpool, bike, walk, or think about the school fleet maybe, or, you know, maybe that's not that's a proposal type of projects, or as opposed to actually, you know, going all the way and being able to persuade your school district to have a more energy efficient fleet. But even just eat local or buy local campaigns can help to decrease the amount of fossil fuel that's used for transportation of food or other commerce. Additionally, deforestation itself is a cause of increased greenhouse gases. So thinking about activities, mitigation strategies that students could employ for an action project include things like tree plantings or native plant restorations, thinking about how to increase the amount of recycled paper used. Additionally, agriculture. So Renee alluded to the amount of food waste. So thinking about decreasing the amount of food waste, as well as kind of alternative pathways for that food waste if it is produced, to avoid landfill, so going a composting route. But then strategies around encouraging decreases in meat or dairy consumption absolutely will play a role. And then finally, you might think, oh, industry and cement production and plastic production are getting a bit more tangential towards greenhouse gas emissions, but it's actually, there is quite a strong link, and surprisingly, cement is very high up. Clearly, we're not pouring a whole lot of cement here in the education sector, but thinking about plastics and the energy that is needed, as well as the other connections to actual thinking about single-use plastics, so decreasing the amount of single-use plastics we use, as well as kind of increasing reusable products, would be great projects that students could take advantage of different mitigation approaches. Similarly, thinking about.
I just want to say one thing, Andrea, is the things that we're going through here are just suggestions, like examples, and this could be a good exercise for your students if you kind of deal with the causes and have them brainstorm in groups of things that could address those things. So this is not an exhaustive list, it's just examples.
Yeah, and so similarly, some adaptation strategies for some of the different impacts that you and your students may be experiencing, such as severe weather or heavy rain events. Adaptation strategies include things like planting rain gardens or increasing green infrastructure to deal with all that additional water, dealing with frequent or more increased floodings, thinking about how students could start projects to help stabilize riverbanks or wetland habitats with native plants. Another climate change impact that we've heard a lot about recently, of course, as well, is drought and heat waves and increased wildfires. So thinking about increasing efforts to conserve water, and such as installing rain barrels, dealing with the temperature rise and the impact that changing temperatures have on habitats, thinking about how we can protect habitats or advocate for protecting certain ecosystems for different threatened species, and then of course sea level rise. Encouraging students to think about projects that could protect wetlands, coastal areas, reefs, restoring living shorelines, dunes, so on and so forth. So lots of different kind of mitigation and adaptation strategies that students could take advantage of different projects, but really what we're hoping to see is that students are able to really explain thoroughly that cause and effect situation going on between what is happening as a result of climate change or causing climate change, and what are the impacts that we are feeling, that we are experiencing, but then what actions can we take, and what impacts do those actions have for the positive. So really kind of thinking about linking the steps that are being taken by the students to having a positive impact, and directly, not just like a generalized, everyone feels better about the environment impact, but a much more specific link to how their actions either mitigate or adapt to climate change. So some of the eligible projects could include any of those different activities or strategies that we were talking about that I just introduced. As Renee said, this was not meant to be an exhaustive list in any way, and this was not meant to be like a menu that you choose from, and this is the only things that you could do. So there are certainly many different projects that are possible out there. We hope that the projects have either a school-based or a community-based impact. And we hope that the projects, or we expect that the projects to have that sort of tangible outcome. And what we mean by that are projects that either have a physical change to the environment, projects that might have, and these are kind of options here, this is not a checklist, projects that might be able to reduce that climate change causing factor. So those would be those mitigation strategies. But we can also have projects that lead more towards campaigns that increase awareness of climate change and the need for behavioral change. So some of the energy conservation or water conservation might be more campaigns. Similarly, campaigns amongst the students to encourage civic action or advocacy, letter writing campaigns, open comment periods, kind of having the students learn more about different ongoing legislation in New Jersey that's related to climate change, and then having the students weigh in either the municipal or county or state level, and then even doing the research and starting to write grant proposals to support why your school needs a rain garden, and kind of putting the legwork, the like kind of phase one stuff, to come up with a grant, to a proposal to apply for a grant to get your school an EV charging station. I don't know, whatever it is that your students feel is important for them and their community. These are like to actually do the project itself, but also build awareness of why that project is needed, or to research and then write funding proposals as well. All could be, you know, in the realm of possibility for different projects.
And we do happen to have a Sustainable Jersey for Schools grant opportunity open. I think the applications are due in March. So that timing works well. And there's information on the grants page of the Sustainable Jersey for Schools. But there's also other grant opportunities offered through EDA and through DEP and the BPU. So Googling opportunities for funding will, you know, there's lots of different options.
And this could even be the start to a kind of a great, an annual participation, where this year the students in your classes write for these grants and hopefully are awarded some funding. And then next year, you know, your student climate challenge project could be actually implementing the project that you proposed this year. So lots of opportunities. Once the students have kind of settled on a project idea for their action project, one of the things that we want to make clear in this info session is that we are very excited that the students are doing these activities, but we also want to make sure that the students are able to share with others their positive impact. And the method that we've chosen for allowing students or encouraging students to share their positive impact is through what's called digital storytelling. So what sets a digital story apart from just, you know, any other kind of videos? And it's really that these digital stories are going to tell that personal side of things, really connect the viewer, connect the audience with the video makers, thinking about who's in the story and why they're telling the story. So often we think about the 3 C's of digital storytelling, where through digital storytelling, we are trying to connect with audience members on that emotional level to really share with others about the experiences that are happening in our lives as the videographers or as the creators of our digital stories. Digital stories also let students kind of communicate their perspective and their perceptions about, especially about climate change, because as I'm sure if you're here, you know, youth have a very important voice in this role of dealing with climate change. And we're not trying to leave the climate crisis for our youth to deal with, but thinking about ways that they are impacted by this already and how can they communicate their perspective and what they can be doing about it. And then digital storytelling, we also feel kind of really showcases that collaborative effort. So thinking about who's in the story, but then what, by sharing their story, by sharing how climate change is impacting them in a negative way, how they kind of brainstormed and came up with an action project, and then also what challenges they experienced to complete this action project, and then what positive impacts. Kind of thinking that whole story through kind of builds on that collaboration to bring not only the video makers into the process, but hopefully the audience members as well. So digital storytelling kind of has taken off a lot in kind of how people tell climate stories. There are tons of resources out there around samples of these types of digital stories, instructional resources about how to bring this into your classroom. Here's 4 different groups that have started to do this. And if we didn't say it before, my apologies, but we will be sharing this PowerPoint presentation with all of the hyperlinks active with you following the session, and it'll be posted on the website as well.
And they're all listed in the teacher guide too.
Right. Yeah, that teacher guide that Renee referred to, that's on the Sustainable Jersey for Schools website, which is the hyperlink of the bit.ly that I dropped in when I started talking, has tons more resources, way more information than we could share in, you know, the hour that we have together. So definitely please check it out. We're constantly revising the Google Doc as well to add more resources. So if you come across a resource that you want to share with us, we would love to see it too. And then finally, or actually not finally, but the next idea, sorry. I'm sure many of you are aware climate change is bigger than just a science topic. And we feel very strongly about this, that this is, it's too big of a crisis to just leave it to us science teachers to deal with it. So we need to be thinking about how climate change already has been integrated in the 2020 New Jersey Student Learning Standards across all content areas and all grade levels. So we need to be thinking about how, yeah, sure, maybe science teachers are kind of leading the charge, but how we can bring on our colleagues in interdisciplinary approaches to be thinking about integrating climate change across the curriculum whenever possible. So thinking about connections to civics is like blatant in my mind, with civics and social studies, but also thinking about math and literature and language arts and telling a story, thinking about plot, thinking about how you can engage an audience, service learning projects, socio-emotional learning, absolutely, many, many, many different connections in my mind here, and hopefully in your mind as well. So there are additionally some curriculum integration resources out there. Clean Network is amazing. So many different resources available and all searchable and vetted by educators and climate scientists alike. New Jersey Department of Ed has recently created a website around climate change education resources that I want to bring your attention to. Thinking more about interdisciplinary approaches subject to climate is fantastic. And then of course, the Teacher-Friendly Guide to Climate Change is a downloadable book that if you feel you want to brush up on your understanding of climate change, that's a great resource as well. So the planned sessions that we have, the educational sessions for students that we have planned right now are kind of falling in these general categories. First, a session introducing students to what the New Jersey Student Climate Challenge is, the expectations around the projects, the expectations around the digital story component, kind of just introducing the challenge itself to students. And then most of the other sessions focus on ideas for how to support students to do a project related to energy efficiency outreach at home or school, for example, or supporting a transition to EVs, or thinking about waste reduction at the school, or zero waste efforts, or other stewardship or community ed or advocacy type sessions. This includes one of the main changes that we're trying to focus on this year is to have a bit shorter sessions that are a bit more targeted towards action. So we'll have some information about why energy efficiency is important, but more focus in the session to assist students with coming up with ideas to how to actually complete an action project related to energy efficiency, for example. So I'm going to take a minute and pause right now, and I'll pull down my slides to get to see all of your wonderful faces for a minute, and to think if there's any additional topics that you think your students would be really, really interested to learn more about that we need to make sure to include upon in this list. So let me stop my share.
So Andrea, I had a question. I'm actually an art teacher, but
Awesome.
I do talk about interdisciplinary approaches, but I'm the advisor of our high school environmental club, and the students did a presentation not that long ago about the superior sequestration properties of grassland or grasses. And we often hear a lot about tree planting, but I don't know, I saw a tree planting up there and I was thinking, like, what about grass planting?
Yeah, no, definitely. Thinking
Grasses.
about, right, any kind of carbon capturing, we're on board. No.
Okay, no, I think like in terms of, not that you're not on board, I meant in terms of
The session, right, of course.
educational session,
Yeah.
just sort of carbon sinks, carbon sequestration generally would be awesome.
Sure. Okay, cool. You're on mute, Renee.
Yeah. There's a lot of talk about there's retention basins all over the place, and turning them into kind of more natural, like wildflower places instead of things that need to be mowed and and tended to like that. So that would be like a great project if you had a retention basin on your school property and wanted to kind of convert it to more natural state. But yes, carbon sequestration is something that we do want to address.
Yeah, and Jody, I see your suggestion in the chat about eating less meat. That's absolutely, we feel that that's kind of, we had a session last year that kind of talked about food waste and food choices and like planning meals better and all in efforts to have less food waste. And yeah, definitely thinking about behavioral choices around consumption was definitely a part of it. So that is absolutely on our list. So thanks for.
And that was kind of the winning topic for the high school segment. So that doesn't mean that you can't do that again, because it'll be a whole different judges and everything. But yeah, if you and the videos from the pilot are posted on the website. They're like a sub page of that main page that we gave you. So if you're interested, you can kind of take a look at those. And those were kind of the pilot project. And they kind of, what we learned from that is kind of the more feedback that we're giving you about making a stronger connection to climate change and kind of telling a story. Go ahead, Jody.
Hey, Jody.
So I don't even know how I got on this because I don't teach in a school, although I usually run some after school programs, and I'm going to probably be working with Hackensack schools. So
Great.
But I'm with Hackensack Riverkeeper,
Oh.
and I just got off another meeting that was for Riverkeeper wide with psychologists on behavioral changes and how to best motivate people for behavioral changes. Mm-hmm. And a few weeks back, I was also a judge for some problem solving science project for more of a private school. And one of the groups that presented, or it was just a couple of girls or three of them, maybe so a small group, was utilizing social media. And I thought that, as much as I'm more of a hands-on person, it's just been hitting me more and more that maybe that's a possibility for coming up with some sort of social media campaigns that will help to change people's behaviors or help to encourage behavioral change. So that might be one way one thing you could add to it too. I mean, I'm not a person that usually condones a lot of that, but it started hitting me so much more afterwards, what potential that could possibly have. And there's all sorts of analytics. And the psychologists that were talking about the way they do their studies, I just thought it was interesting that they were making sure that you understood that people tend to respond to changes when you're dealing more with local things, mm-hmm. and
personal stories,
we're all
personal
connections. Right. And because she was speaking to a group of water-oriented people that, we're looking to try and get people interested in water issues. And there's a lot of climate change things that affect water. But for them, most people will respond to problems with weather over saying the words climate change. So if you bring in the issues that you want to fix before you dump in climate change, that holds on to a larger group of people to be accepting of the information you're giving them.
Right, and that's where I know exactly what research you're talking about. Yeah, and I think that's definitely accurate, especially for the general population. I think there's probably a little bit of sea change happening with youth and youth being more ready to latch on to climate change as an issue of importance to them. But yeah, absolutely. And I think at the end of the day, that's why we wanted to encourage students to think about local connections and local issues that matter to them, and to think about how climate change is negatively influencing them. And then really that's the purpose behind the digital story as well, to be thinking about building connections and building awareness of issues, but also of positive impact that can be had as well at the local level, and then seeing how that can expand further. So yeah, no, I think there's definitely, you know, some give and take around, do we come out and call it climate change, or do we just call it severe weather or sunny day flooding or whatever it is? You know, and that's where students will know their local community to see what is going to be the best kind of anecdote to share to get people on board, or strategies to approach talking about this really important issue.
Right. And
so yeah, thanks.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, yeah, community education and outreach was a popular topic and is a popular topic and really important. But the thing that's going to kind of distinguish between, you know, submissions is ones that are kind of based on specific strategies. So like having a target audience and understanding who that is and developing channels that will reach that audience. And so those are things that the students should think about, rather than just a general education campaign, like more focused on who and what the message is. And then if they are able to track it, even better, but that's not necessary, but just at least having some planning going into the campaign.
Great. And another, I'm sorry.
Another thing was definitely providing concrete activities to have a positive effect for people to walk away with knowing exactly what they can do.
Right. Definitely. Yeah. And that's where we really, you know, last year there were some submissions that kind of talked in generalities around things. And that's where we really want to emphasize to our project leader, you know, our teacher mentors this year, that we're really looking for that connection to be clear and to be sharing kind of what steps were taken and what others can do as well. But great. Any other topics for student kind of focus sessions, or as a PD provider, by, you know, training, any professional development focus areas that you all feel would be really necessary to support you when you're supporting your students in this project?
I have a comment, and I don't know if it connects to what you just asked or not, but I needed help, and I don't know if you can, Renee, or you can talk. I don't know if you have to talk to me privately about it, but I'll start the conversation and then you can tell me. So I was just wondering if my students continue with the same topic with aquaponics, because we were one of the finalists, will we be disqualified because we're still working on how to deal with possibly being a food desert? And I don't want to take the same approach as the video that we made last year, but I can see where we hit brick walls in what we're trying to do. We're not able to completely like move our idea out so that the whole community embraces it. I did get the mayor involved, but we kind of got stuck. So if we do community outreach, I would be at a loss as to how to make connections. Like, would you be able to help us with that? Or
Yeah, we can help you with that. And I think Jody is a good example of, can everybody mute, please? Jody's a good example of a nonprofit. And like, I know there, I have a connection for you in Salem County. There's someone from the DEP. And there's also like a Salem community group that have gotten 2 grants from ACE to like improve playgrounds, but they're also involved in larger issues in the city. And you may be able to connect with them. So I will get that information for you.
But I think the short answer also is that you would not necessarily be disqualified for continuing a project, and you know, so it's a new submission, it's, you know, kind of the project is continuing. And I think talking about those challenges, that you're exactly what you're talking about, well, how can we work around those challenges, could be a focus of this year's, you know, type of action project and digital story. So, but I think if Renee's got some resources too, but it looks like in the chat, we just got a suggestion as well, but.
Yeah, Gary Nelson does work with me. He's helped us a lot with our aquaponics. Thank you.
Sure. All right, well, I think in the interest of time, I really would love to hear any other ideas for either student sessions or professional development sessions. We are saving the chat, of course, so if you want to throw it into the chat, if any come to mind. I would like to take them, oops, that's not what I meant to do. Is that okay, Renee?
Yeah, and I do
Okay.
want to save time. We have some of the teachers that participated this year. I wanted them to kind of share.
Right, yeah, yeah. So I'll be super fast.
Mhm.
Oh, that's not what I meant to show. Sorry. Why is it? What's going on with my screen share? I'm sorry. Well, I can do this on the fly. I don't know what my screen share is. My PowerPoint's fouling up. So the rubric I want to, well, I'm gonna have to get that up. The rubric I want to be able to show you a couple of things. So again, the rubric is going to be scored around.
Do you want me to pull it up, Andrea?
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. It's showing me things. What are you all seeing?
A blank screen.
Yeah, okay. Zoom.
Okay.
Okay.
Fine?
There we go. Thank you. Apologies, folks. So actually, Renee, if you could go back one slide, I just realized I skipped a slide. So there are tons of resources out there for you to be thinking about whether you need technical assistance around actual resources, whether you need connections like Renee and I are trying to help you to think through at this point. Next slide. And you can kind of click down a bunch of all of these in interest of time. So there, we can direct you to online resources. We can kind of help you to think about other tech resources, but even don't overlook, I bet many of you have either municipal or school-based green teams, and then also the regional hubs are great resources because very often they have projects that are ongoing or that they're trying to get off, off and running, and really could benefit from some student input and some student assistance, but also guidance to help push projects forward. And okay, if you want to go to the next one, Renee. So the rubric. So this is how the contest submissions are going to be graded. So these first 3 rows all have to do with the actual video that is being provided, being submitted. We want each of those 3 rows are evenly just split between 4 points a pop. So one element is really, we want to see that creative storytelling going on. We want to kind of engage the audience, but still be clear yet creative. Creative but accurate, because the next 2 rows really focus on the student's ability in the video to describe kind of that cause and effect relationship between climate change, the impact or the cause, and how their project is kind of playing a role in there is really that solutions row. So the students are able to describe their project and kind of talk about how it's practical and how it makes those connections. It can be implemented by themselves and by others, so on and so forth. So that's really the video. And then along with the video, if you, there's also a written component that is submitted. And so similarly, there's 8 points in this category. For the written components, there's expectations around a science explanation. So because we want to support the learning here, we don't want to just go out and do something. We want students to understand why they're doing what they're doing and how it has a positive impact. So that's kind of these 2 rows around the written science explanation, and then some of the other written project components around their inspiration, the resources they utilize, so on and so forth. This rubric is absolutely shareable with your students. I'm not of the mindset that it's a surprise how you're going to be graded. So this rubric is included in the teacher guide and in the student guides alike. So definitely check it out to have a little bit more insight into these different categories. Any questions about the rubric or how things will be scored? That's a good question, Vicky. I'm not sure. I'll have to talk to Renee about that and the project team. Just because we know we will have different scores this year, and the rubric has changed slightly to kind of better focus in students on what we're looking for. But I'll get back to you with an answer on that, Vicky. And then Renee, I think that's the last slide, right?
Just to,
Yeah, so definitely check out the bit.ly. There's that email as well that sends an email to Renee, and Renee either is amazing at finding great connections for you to resources, people to connect with you, groups to connect with. For some of the more education stuff, she sends them my way, and I can help to find additional resources as well. But I know we have just a little bit of time left, but I wanted to, like Renee said, if anybody, I know Vicky, I know so there were some others here on the call that participated this past year, or Renee, if you
yeah,
wanna
Vicky
facilitate
and
that.
Claudine. So Vicky, do you
I
want
didn't see
to
Claudine.
share kind of your experience or give any tips
Oh,
to
there's Claudine.
people?
Well, I mean, we did it when I had like 2 students in the class because everybody was like home virtually. So there was challenges just with the pandemic. I mean, we only had 2 students participate in the video because I couldn't get any more. I was actually wondering what I wanted to be critiqued, I guess, is what I want to say, as to how we can improve for next year. And I was wondering if it was because I didn't have enough of a team, but it was because of the pandemic. As far as the information that was presented, I just thought it was like fabulous. And the professors that you had on there were so knowledgeable and accessible, like Professor Drews and another professor from Rutgers, I forget her name. She met with both of my students, which was an awesome experience for them because it further encourages them to take on climate change and when they get into college, and even encourage, well, first off, I work in a school where I don't even know if some of these students are even aspiring to go to college. So to be able to work with professors when I reached out to them and for them to talk to us virtually, I just think that was just like such a highlight. And then the information was extremely detailed as to how climate change impacts us in New Jersey. Because the kids always are thinking about polar bears and stuff like that, with losing their habitat when it comes to climate change. So I don't know. That's my feedback. That's all I have to say about it.
Thanks, Vicky. And Vicky's referring to last year we did educational sessions too, and they were more focused on more the general topics and experts in the areas. And the recordings are all posted on the website. Again, that bit.ly takes you to the main page, but there's one that has the last year's session recordings that lists all the different topics and who the speakers were, and you can access them and show them to your students or give them as assignments, homework assignments to look at them. Claudine, did you want to add anything?
Yes, so I had a team of 3. We were also dealing with the hybrid situation. One person was in school and the other 2 were virtual. So we did watch the videos together as a class, like we made the whole class watch the videos. And then our team basically, when they were trying to figure out what to do, they researched a whole bunch of different ones, and they were talking about the ocean is really about how that's where we get our oxygen from and not the trees. And they had all these different concepts, but the one that touched them the most, all 3 of them, which was composting, they decided to. So I think even in the beginning for the teams that are going to do it, if it looks like they're not sure what they want to do or where they want to go, they do eventually figure it out by finding what common ground they all have and interested in, or even just hearing another talk about it helps them say, you know what, I want to do more about that. In the area of aquaponics, so I did put out there Gary Nelson at Delsey. His son, Gary Nelson at Willingboro High School, also does it, same exact name. So if you want to reach out to him as well, they have an aquaponics system that is up and running as well too. But let the kids be kids and use their strengths is my suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I love that suggestion because it really is the idea here is that this is like I mean, I know as educators, we're all kind of like, okay, everybody, this is what we're doing today. This is, we're used to leading a lot of the time. And really for this project, we love to see, kind of students, exactly like Claudine said, kind of like honing in on topics and that are important to them, that are meaningful to them personally, and to act on that and to find projects that really connect to their lives, their communities, their schools, and kind of run with it in that direction. And that we as the teacher mentors and the kind of educators along for the ride, we're supporting them and linking it to our curriculum, but at the same time allowing the kids to be kids, and they find their resources and we can support you and to support them, but that it's really kind of a youth forward activity. Action project.
And we did have teams that ranged from 2 to probably 15 or 6, about 15. Well, they originally registered 15, but when all was said and done, not all 15 participated in the project. So keeping it like to a manageable group, 3 to 7 is good. And I mean, you could even do it where maybe they're all addressing the same thing, but in different ways, or like they're doing community education outreach, but to different targets or whatever. As long as, they're doing something different, it could be in the same kind of area.
Right, to keep it more manageable for you, if you have a class of 30 kids or something like that, thinking you've got I've got 10 teams, so thinking about how you can group them and kind of guide them to be kind of similar in some ways, but enough of their own projects as well. But yeah, definitely. Okay, so I think any other questions, I think is what I know. We're just like crashing up on 4:30, but we'd be happy to take questions, or if there's any comments or other ideas to share, we'd love to hear them.
And just one other thing while you're thinking of questions is that if you haven't registered to participate in the climate challenge, it would be good to do that so that I'll be emailing you directly, like when we launch the sessions. So you'll be the first ones that I notify. And then our website will be updated as time goes on with new information.
I just dropped into the chat the Google form link for the registration. It's also found on the bit.ly, the New Jersey Student Climate Challenge page within Sustainable Jersey and Sustainable Jersey for Schools, but there's the direct link.
And registering doesn't commit you to anything. It just puts you on, on the VIP list so that you get the information as soon as possible.
Fun. Okay, any questions that we can help address or brainstorms?
Can I ask you one other question? I know this is for regular public schools, but if I'm working with a public school, do you mind if I put my name on the list to get registered? Because
no, that's fine.
An after school situation.
No, that's fine, as long as it's linked to the school, and the school, if your students' projects win, the school is the one that gets the grant to advance their initiatives. And then the students do get like a commemorative gift and an award, like a award certificate, and kind of the experience of being recognized. And hopefully, like I said, we'll be live at the end of the year. So that would be great. But we had to go over quickly, but I do want to reinforce that connecting with local resources, like Jody is from a nonprofit. There's tons of nonprofits doing different things that will support you. And even like Rutgers Cooperative Extension and other university organizations, a lot of groups are paid money to work with schools and municipalities to do projects like this. So, it's that they want to help you set up a rain garden or do whatever, convert a basin to natural state. And that's part of what role that we play, is that we can try to connect you with resources to help you do that. And there is a video a link to a video, I think in the teacher's guide and the student guide, that tells you how to connect with your local green team. If you go on the website, it will have contacts, but we can help you with that too. Any other questions? Well, I hope all of you will consider participating. It's a fun activity for the students, and please share information about it with your colleagues. It's the more the merrier. And
Yeah,
Verity
well-
Lambert just joined us. She's the program coordinator for the Sustainable Jersey.
She's been here. I
No,
saw
I've
her.
been here the whole time. I just
I know,
turned on
she
my
is.
camera to
Never
say bye.
Yeah, you just showed up on my.
Yeah.
It's a great connection though.
Yeah, but I would take a look at this, and in the teacher guide, it has that. There's a lot of Sustainable Jersey actions that could be used as projects, and the guidance kind of gives the resources right in there and kind of a step by step. And then if you are participating, you can use that for an action submission. And then one other thing that sometimes I get questions on is if you're already doing a project for something else, that's fine. You can count it as your climate challenge project. So some schools are participating in Empowered Schools. It's kind of like an energy program. If they're participating in that and they want to use that project, that's fine. They're doing the work, and they just have to kind of do a digital story on it. So linking it to other things that are going on is fine.
Right, because all these projects work hand in hand, so we're definitely on board with that. Okay, well, thank you so much for giving us an hour of your time this afternoon. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions or any other comments for us, ideas, thoughts. Appreciate it.
Great. And we'll be in touch for sure in the new year.